My name is Jamin. I'm your first friend in Alaska. I'm an associate real estate broker in South Central Alaska. Today, we're going to be talking about what's going on in Anchorage, looking specifically at the residential, the condo, and the multifamily market. This is a pretty interesting market, and we're going to talk about what I kind of expect to see in the near future, if we're going to see any big changes coming up going into the fourth quarter. Before we get started, though, give this video a like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Let's jump into it. First thing that we see on the residential side for the single-family residential homes is that this time last year there was 378 properties available on the market, and this year 365. So seeing a bit of a decrease, not a whole lot. And I mean, we don't like to see it go that way, especially because normally prior to COVID, we would expect to see anywhere from like 900, like maybe 1,000 properties on the market. So anything 300 is not really what we want to see right now. This shortage is really what's driving a lot of factors in our market, but we'll save more of that for the summary. The next thing we see is that the number of properties that have actually sold went from about 226 this time last year to about 236 this year. So we're seeing a bit of an increase there, and that's really the number there, 236 for the month of July. That's really kind of par for the course, even prior to COVID. So that's right about where we want to see it, even though the inventory is about a third of what it normally is. All right, last but not least, let's talk average sold price. So the average sold price year to date last year for Anchorage for single family homes went from $510,000 this time last year to $532,000 this year, which means we're seeing about a 4.3% increase for the average sold price. Looking in previous years, that's right about what we would expect to see. Actually looking prior to COVID, we'd see anywhere from 0.5% to about 2.2%. So that's still a pretty healthy appreciation. In previous years, I mean, we're seeing like 6.2, 5.1, 7.6. And you kind of get into the COVID years where things kind of get a little more crazy after that. It's difficult for Anchorage to see like those big double-digit appreciation rates like what we saw in other markets, like over in the Matsu Valley, just because we're starting out at just a much higher average sold price. But it is steadily increasing, and that's not unsustainable. Usually we're right around like 3-4% is kind of where most people want the appreciation for a good real estate market to be. And we'll talk about what might change that in the summary, though. All right, let's take a look at condos real quick. If you are hot to trot as far as condos go, I got good news for you. The number of condos proportionally coming onto the market has increased by about 25% from the previous year. Before we get too excited, though, the actual numbers is it went from 120 this time last year to 162 this year. So seeing about 42 new properties coming onto the market. I guess they'd be like 30-some%, but you get the point. But historically, though, prior to COVID, we would expect to see anywhere from like 450, upwards of like 500. So even though it is increasing, it's still not a whole lot of inventory compared to what we normally have. We'll take it. We're not gonna, look a gift horse in the teeth here. This is still down from where we historically would expect to be for inventory for condos. The next thing we see is that this time last year there were 105 condos that sold, and this year it's 94. Now that's actually about normal of what we would expect to see, so I'm not seeing a whole lot of big changes there even historically, which does indicate there is a pretty good demand for condos in Anchorage, and that's to be expected because anytime you get a situation where the costs of single family homes are going up and interest rates are high and the cost of living is kind of pinching people, they're going to be looking for these more affordable condo options that are just less per month. You might normally have less appreciation, but usually you're going to have less to pay every month. All right, now looking at the average sold price, did I not say the average sold price for condos is less than what they are for single family homes? Not a big surprise. It went from $278,000 this time last year to $288,000 this year, which means we're seeing approximately a 3.5% increase for the average sold price. So I really expect to see, this dynamic continuing to grow as we move forward, because as long as interest rates remain at the levels that they are currently at, I expect to see more and more people seriously considering condos as an affordable housing option. But there's just not a whole lot of condos available because those that do have them right now are holding on to them because they're looking out there and they realize, hey, this is pretty affordable compared to what life could be like. And so you see a lot of people just kind of hanging on to what they have, which means you have a situation where you have kind of a growing demand and a shrinking inventory is what I think might happen there. But we'll see what happens. Everything continues as is. Inventory will hopefully keep going up, but it all kind of comes down to what's happening with the interest rates, because that impacts the affordability for the large single-family homes, and that really does have a big impact on the condo market. All right, let's take a break here real quick. For those who've been watching for a little bit, you do know that I host a meetup every month for people who are actually living here in Alaska. If you're new to the state or you're just feeling social and you want to get out and meet some folks, feel free to go to the Facebook group down below, and we'll have the information, updates, and everything on all of the upcoming events that we're going to be hosting, like berry picking, paddle boarding, hikes, just kind of stuff like that. Not, we're not getting too crazy with it, but just an opportunity to kind of get out and kind of share life and talk with people. Also, if you're looking to making a move up here to Alaska, feel free to reach out to me on my website in the description section down below. Register and put relocation guide in the comment section, and I'll make sure to send you a copy of my relocation guide. Okay. Let's go and finish up today's market update, looking at the multifamily market and giving you the summary. Now, looking at the multifamily market, we see that this time last year there were 86 properties available on the market, and now there are 82. That's a bit of a decrease from the year before. Proportionally not that big of a deal, honestly. Kind of just be a rounding error, honestly, once you start only talking about 4 properties. But historically, though, we would normally see about 240 properties available on the market. So kind of the same story you get with the other asset classes of inventory is not great, and once you look historically, it is definitely not great. Looking at the number of properties that have actually sold, we see this time last year 27 multifamily properties sold, and this year there were a total of 33, which historically 33 is about what we would expect prior to COVID. So the demand for these multifamily properties is really remaining about the same, or maybe even higher than what it was previously, even with the inventory being so much smaller than it is. Last but not least, we see the average sold price went from about $587,000 for multifamily properties in Anchorage this time last year to $617,000 this year, which means we've seen about a 5.1% increase for the average sold price. It is a little surprising to me. So last year, we had like a big jump from the previous year in 2023 from about $501,000 to $586,000. It's like, okay, obviously there was some kind of a large commercial property that sold, and that threw all the numbers off. What surprises me is the numbers actually continue to increase this year, because it went from 501 the 587 to 617. So, we're still seeing a pretty solid appreciation for multifamily properties in Anchorage. I don't think it's gone up quite that much. I think you still get some commercial activity. They're kind of throwing some of the numbers off here. But, that is pretty indicative of the multifamily market doing quite well in Anchorage. So it's great news if you're a landlord. Just know that these numbers include everything from the little duplex all the way up to that big commercial property we're talking about. So, you have to look at the specific type of multifamily to get any kind of clear idea for specific properties. But if we're just looking at the tide here, that's kind of rising all ships. That's what we're seeing. It is on a trend of going upwards. All right, let's go ahead and give you the summary real quick. So, number one, if I'm a buyer and I'm looking at this market, I am probably not on the fence if I can afford to purchase and it makes sense in my situation right now. And the reason for that is I'm really not expecting to see any big changes coming in the market anytime soon. If they bring interest rates down drastically, like we get into like the 5s, then that is going to be an absolute feeding frenzy. And the theory is that hopefully a lot of sellers will be willing to sell the homes that they currently have and to go find something else, and that can create more inventory. Problem with that, though, is once you have a seller that's selling a house, but they go and buy another house, that's not really creating more inventory because they're buying one and they're selling one. Now, if they were selling one and then moving away, they just created, it was a net positive of one inventory. But when you have them are selling and then buying, it's more of a wash. But what we have right now is just a lot of sellers that are sitting on their properties that are like in the 2 or 3% interest rates because everyone refinanced their purchase back in 2020, 2021, and they're just not willing to go anywhere until interest rates come down a little bit. I think if we get down to like anything in the 5s, we're going to start seeing some more inventory. I don't really think we're going to see a drop in prices though, because everyone's going to probably surge towards the market. And again, you've got sellers that are trying to sell a house and then go and buy a house. You know, they're kind of becoming competition in and of themselves too. So it's not really a net positive for the inventory. And I know there are a lot of people out there like looking at all these charts and trying to show like this one variable that just shows, well, this shows the market's about to collapse and blah, blah, blah. I'm going to help you cut through all the noise. Okay. The only things that matter in real estate is supply and demand. Okay. The only way your variable has any application or relevance whatsoever is if it impacts supply or demand. If it doesn't impact either of those things, it's garbage. Throw it out. I've said this quite a few times before, but if it makes sense in your situation and you can afford to do so right now, I would probably just jump into this market and purchase right now, because if the interest rates do come down, then I mean, it's probably going to be a bloodbath. You're probably not seeing prices coming down because you got a lot of people jumping in and you've got a lot of those sellers that are selling, yes, but then they're also purchasing. So not really creating a whole lot of net inventory available on the market. And I mean, so it's better to be in a house that you've purchased than you can just sit back and watch everyone else lose their minds and then refinance if you really want to. So that would be my recommendation. For the sellers, you know, it's a good solid market to be in right now. You just want to be careful you don't overplay your hand, because properties are sitting on the market for a little bit longer now. And if you don't price correctly, there's definitely more of a sense of pulling and gravity towards reality these days. So if it's not, if you're not being realistic on your price whatsoever, people are just going to be ignoring you, and you're going to become like the aged fruit at the supermarket that just nobody wants anything to do with. So yep, that's what I would say there. Investors, big thing, just make sure that your numbers actually do balance out. Keep a close eye on the insurance and all that, because those policies should be renewing pretty soon here. And yeah, the cost of insurance and everything is definitely been going up. But this has been your market update, talking about what's going on in Anchorage for the real estate market. I hope it's been useful. Do make sure you reach out to me if you have any questions or would like me to help you with buying, selling, or investing. That is how I actually make my bread and butter. It's not actually from, actual YouTube here. So feel free to give me a call, shoot me a text, contact information's down below. Thanks for hanging out with me. We'll see you next time.